Most businesses think they understand their customer journey, but if that were true, they wouldn't be losing people halfway through. And I used to make these same exact mistakes. I had the data, I had the personas, and even a decent onboarding flow, but I was still bleeding retention. Then I built a map that I'm about to show you today, and within 60 days, my retention doubled. So in this video, I'm walking you through the exact customer journey map that I've used, and more importantly, how you can understand the thinking and the exact map so you can implement it in your business today. So I've been doing e-commerce for about 8 years. I've built companies that have done millions of dollars in sales. I've also failed on about 10 different businesses, just like anybody you talk to in this industry. And I was always very good at acquisition. I was always very good at acquiring customers, but I was never good at retaining my customers. So I'd make a lot of upfront capital. I'd do a lot of sales, but none of it was recurring. The customers usually didn't come by and buy again. I was selling trending products. I was riding waves, so nothing was very sustainable in the beginning. So that's why I switched my focus to the retention side of building a business, which is so important for any small business, medium-sized business, or anybody that is starting out to understand. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the shifts of mindset that I had to have in order to start retaining all of our clients. So like I said, we're decent in acquisition, decent at onboarding, but we're still bleeding users. Data, personas, flows, they were all there, but no real clarity on what customers were actually experiencing. So one day I looked at the full funnel, the full journey of where my customers were coming from, ultimately until they stopped buying. And what I found was absolutely amazing, because if you understand how to read data, and by the end of this video, you'll understand what to look at, you're going to understand where people are dropping off. It's not magic. It's simply data. So if you understand where to look, you're going to increase your retention drastically. So what does this actually feel like for the new user? The answer? Mine was confusing, generic, and no momentum. And when you're selling a product, you want it to feel unique. You want them to build momentum, and you want to get them a story to tell, which is what we're going to go over. So there's 4 main stages when it comes to customer journey. And by understanding these stages, it's going to give you an overview of what you need to start fixing to increase your retention. And number 1 is what happens the moment they sign up. This is so important because as soon as someone purchases, they immediately get buyer's remorse. So you have to make sure that that initial delivery of what you have is professional. It explains everything. It gives them next steps. So what happens moment of sign up? Number 2 is what is their first success and when do they experience it? How fast does it take for them to get a result with your product? And this doesn't have to be making $1 million in a day. 99% of the time it's not. But what it has to do with is their goals and their intentions when purchasing the product. So when does their goals get met? Or at least the first part of it. Number 3 is objection interception. Every single customer that you have is going to have objections after they sign up. So you have to have the ability to intercept those objections before they start festering and ultimately lead to canceling the product. And number 4 is what is their viral brag moment? This is probably the most important, especially if you want to build word of mouth marketing, is what is the story that they're going to tell others? And most people think that, stories are very unique, and they are to an extent. But there are key ways that you can manufacture a story that they would go out and tell other people, which will lead you to more questions. So now let's go through the key fixes that you need to implement. And there's 3 of them. Number 1 is the action-based onboarding. I've been through way too many onboarding processes that don't give me actions. They give me an overview, sure. They give me an understanding of the product, but they don't set me on a path where I can actually take the action steps and see success. So retention starts at the first success moment. And 90% of the time, it's the onboarding. It's that first interaction with the customer after they sign up. So you have to make sure that first impressions are everything. And you have to make sure that they're getting clear-cut action points on how to do it. And for our companies that we implemented this strategy with, we automated the clarity post-purchase. So we made sure they knew what the next steps were, what the process was, what the average timeline was. So that way on the onboarding, we could focus 100% on building the relationship, cracking jokes, having fun, not making it super technical, because we got through all the technical action steps in the beginning. So the onboarding could be relationship building. So what you need to ask yourself is, what happens in the first 72 hours of your customer's experience? I want you to really think about this. Pause the video if you need to and write down the answer of what happens in the first 72 hours after they purchase. Because if you understand everything that's going on, it's going to make for a much better experience and increase your retention. Because in the first 72 hours is where most customers get buyer's remorse. So you have to do a couple things. You have to overcome their objections. You have to give them action points. You have to make sure that they're on a streamlined path to utilizing your product. Now, number 2, objection-driven nudges. Now, this is very, very important, and it ties into the first 72 hours, but this also ties into the lifespan of your customer. Most users churn due to value confusion. Let me say that again. Most users churn due to value confusion. Because even if your landing page, your funnel, your marketing showcases the value of your product, which gets them to purchase, if they're confused after they purchase, they're ultimately going to cancel, which is churn. So we used to use a software that we could embed answers before objections surface. This software was called Rubik Management. We still use it today on a lot of our systems, but we would analyze all of the top objections that we would have. So we would send out surveys, we would understand it. We'd get enough customers that we could talk to understand all of their objections. Where was the drop-off points? Where was the confusion? And then we would manufacture an automated process to overcome them. So if we understood that the biggest objection that we got after sign up was, I don't have the time to do this, then we would implement emails and videos to send out that would overcome that objection, where you don't need to have a lot of time to do this. Or if it was, I'm not tech savvy enough, I don't have the money, whatever it may be for your business, it is so important that you overcome those and you can automate the whole process. So what you need to ask yourself, and as always, pause this video and ask yourself this question: where do people quit? And do you solve the confusion before it happens? Because this is every business, every industry in the world. There is a moment in time, and usually it's close to the same, where people quit, where people cancel because they're confused. And if you can start analyzing this data and understand that most of my customers after 2 weeks cancel, which is what it was for us. After 2 weeks, they went ghost. So what we manufactured was a week in, we overcame an objection. A week and a half, we overcame an objection. 2 weeks in, we asked for another call. So now they're very interested and engaged in the process. So ask yourself, where do people quit, and what can you do to solve the confusion before it happens? Number 3, storytelling milestones. This is so important. This is probably the biggest thing. If you don't get anything else from this video except for this, it's going to set you apart. Because the stories that people tell others is the biggest thing that will grow your business forever. Ads will do it, all this stuff can do it, but word of mouth is the only thing that truly compounds. So people stay when they have a story to tell. If they don't have any story of success or results, they're going to cancel. And more importantly, they're not going to tell anybody else. So retention means, what do people brag about your product? So you can engineer brag-worthy moments. This is what I was talking about in the beginning. Because stories are very unique, yes, but results can be manufactured. And the results drive the story. So this is what we would always do. If our goal was within a week, you would have set up, let's say, a funnel. Now, in 7 days, we would double check before we send it out, make sure they have it out. But then we'd send them a very well-written email basically telling them about the result that they got. Because some people just forget, or they don't think it's some big result, but you can manufacture it. So, hey, you launched your first funnel in 7 days. Congratulations, that's a huge milestone. Here's how it'll help your business. Here's what it'll do. And that's putting in their head the story that they're going to tell. Now, if someone asks, man, how'd you get such a cool funnel? Oh, dude, I set it up in 7 days using this company. Oh, what company? Blah, blah, blah. And then the story develops. But you manufactured that story to be told, but you also, which is the biggest caveat, you also made them get a result, which is very important. They're not going to tell stories if they didn't get a result, right? So what you need to ask yourself is, what do customers screenshot and share? This is so important. What are people going to share about your product? And if you really understand what people talk about when you're not in the room, you can start really driving growth organically without dumping millions of dollars into ads, which is what most people online will preach. But if you can nail this process right here, then you will have growth forever, because the word of mouth always continues to grow. So what you need to do is map out the emotions, not the features. Each step must trigger an emotion: clarity, momentum, excitement. And then retention equals return of investment of understanding, not of capital. Because if they understand it and you shift the KPIs from clicks to referrals, everything changes. Awareness means nothing if it's not being converted. So if you can manufacture referrals, then that is very, very important. And all of these things that I'm teaching you right now increased our retention. We were at about a 15% churn rate. And then once we started really nailing down our customer journey, we've been able to sustain a 1% churn rate for the past year and a half, which is absolutely insane. I never thought that was possible, but when you really understand everything I just taught you to a science, it's very, very possible. So you may be asking yourself the question, well, this is all great. I'm asking myself these questions. I start understanding it, but how do I copy this, right? And the reason I'm not showing you an exact template is because it is different for every business owner and every industry. But the core of what I'm teaching is always true. So how do you copy it? Well, here's the steps. Number 1, identify your first 3 drop-off points and understand them to a science. Understand why it happens, what happened before to lead them to that, what objection, what emotion did they feel. Understand those 4 things and write it out. This is not something that's going to be fixed in a day. This is something that is everlasting, but within 60 days, if you implement this, I guarantee your churn will decrease. So identify the first 3 drop-off points. Number 2, ask yourself this question: what action or clarity would solve this? So if their objection is, I don't have enough time, what action would you put in place, or what clarity could you give them to overcome it? I don't have time. Action, do this, and it'll take 30 minutes. That's the clarity. Provide them with that value, the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, everything they need in order to get clarity and to take an action. Number 3 is you have to map and automate the next steps, right? Because if you're manually sending everything out for all of your clients, you are not going to have the same journey. So automation is very, very important. And a lot of people get misconception with automation. They think by automating processes, it's less human. But in reality, it increases the relationship you have because you're not ghosting them. You're not forgetting. You're following up consistently. So the biggest thing is, don't overthink it. Map out 3 wins and automate the momentum. So follow these 3 steps. Really take some time. Don't just go down and start doom scrolling YouTube again. Take some time. Think through these questions. Map out your top 3 drop-offs. Ask what action or clarity would solve this. And map out and automate the next steps. It's a very simple process. And we have a lot of videos inside of this channel to help you grow even more in customer journey and how to increase word of mouth. So make sure to subscribe to this channel, watch a couple of those videos, but really take some time and put into action what you just learned in this video, because I guarantee if you do, you are going to see massive results. So like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.